Good evening, everybody. Please take a seat. Before anything we say, big request from the facility here. Please keep your mask on. And when you're coming to the podium, you can take it off while speaking. And for the safety of everyone, please keep your mask on. Thank you for coming here tonight for the April meeting of Collin County Republican Men's Club, jointly sponsored by CCRMC as well as African American Republican Club of Collin County. I'm Ravi Jain, and I'm the president of the club for this year. It's my great honor to have some nice speaker and good, very important topic to cover. We are very thankful to Collin College for letting us use this facility here today. And they have been always very kind to our clubs. So I think it's appropriate for us to have Collin College trustees who are present here to start with Pledge of Allegiance to the United States and the state of Texas flag, followed by invocation. So the Pledge of Allegiance to the United States, I would request Trustee J. said, please come here so that we can have Pledge of Allegiance to the United States.
Let's say the pledge first.
Yes.
Pledge, we can. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And now for the state of Texas. Honor
the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you.
Fred Moses, please.
Good. And all of you that want to stand and join me in prayer tonight for our great country and this great county we live in. So anyway, let us pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day, Lord. We thank you for this hour. We thank you that things are as well as they are with us. We thank you for this country and the opportunity for us to serve and be a part of this great land. And we ask you to continue to be with us, Lord. Cover us under your grace, your power, and your strength about each and every day. We ask you to watch over our country, our leaders, the people in Washington, people that serve our first responders, and our people on the battlefield war. Watch over them. And Father, we just ask you to be with the work that we do as a club, and as the Collin County Republican Men's Club and African American clubs, to try and give people an opportunity to serve and to know about the great work. And be with us, Lord, be as our clubs, and we try and serve and give us what we need that will glorify and honor you. Thank you for the college here, the great work that they do, and the blessing that we have to be in this great facility tonight. And watch it well. And be with all of us, Lord, all of each person here. Meet them at their point of need and be with them and directing God their lives that you get the glory and honor. And Father, we especially those that are running for office and those that are serving, Father, we ask you to be with us as we serve and give us the wisdom to do that. We ask you, as we serve you. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Amen. Thank you, God.
Thank you, Fred, for a very nice, timely invocation. And thank you. He's always partners with us whenever we have big programs. The club together work with us. Thank you very much. Okay, first, before we get started with the actual program, who we are, CCRMC, Collin County Republican Men's Club. Our motto is, our name is Men's Club, that's our name. However, we are men and women, join together, learn together, work together for the betterment of our country on a Republican conservative values. That's what we are. Thank you. Okay, just a few things about our club. We have new executive committee member this year, Randy Johnson, newly minted member. Randy, are you here? Okay. Just wanted to introduce him. He's a new member and he's our sergeant-in-arms, and he will be helping me with this meeting. And when we have question and answer, he will be walking around with people who have any question with the speaker. He can help us with that. Thank you, Randy. Okay, today's meeting is being videotaped by Bobby Tillman. He's doing pro bono and also a member of our club. And within 2 weeks of this meeting, we always put this videotape on YouTube. So if anybody wants to see the videotape later on, or guests who have not been able to make it here, they will be able to see the whole proceeding of this meeting. Bobby, thank you very much for your help. Okay, do we have any elected officials here present from Collin County? Please stand up and we'll give you 5-10 minutes to sit. Could you talk about your position, what you are, 5-10 seconds? Yeah. Lily Bob.
Let them come there.
No, yes. Slow down.
My name is Lily Bao. I have the privilege of serving you on Plano City Council. Right now, I am running for Mayor of Plano. I run because we need to protect this country, protect Collin County, protect Plano, keep it a place for family, freedom, and prosperity. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I was introduced earlier as the president of the Collin County Football Men's Club, but I'm also a trustee here at Collin. The great work we do here, we have 60,000 students, and we have probably the lowest tuition rate and the lowest tax rate of any of the community college in Texas. So thank you for serving, thank you for supporting us, and being a part of this great work that we do here at Collin County. Thank you very much.
Jay, anybody else?
Jay Sad, I'm also on the board of trustees for Collin College. It's very important that we educate, because when employers want to come to your community, they look at your educated population. And by the year 2040, which we'll start talking about, over 60% of all jobs are going to require a second level education. So we got to stay focused, we got to stay ahead of it. We're growing fast, but we need to continue to grow going forward. And education is a big thing. Thank you very much.
Anybody else elected official for Collin County?
Not elected, I'm running.
That come later on. We will come back to people who are running for election later on in the program. Thank you. Okay. Now we have 2 dynamite speakers here planned for the topic that we had shown earlier. And the first speaker is already here. The second speaker just finished his class. He's on his way. He'll be here in time. And this is a very important topic to me. I've been planning this meeting or this topic for discussion at this club since last September, October. And China and the China's policy and CCP, to me, has affected me personally from the childhood when I was growing up all the way into my professional life till I retired. And I can cite several things, but few things from my childhood. First, I was like 6 or 7 years old in 1952-53 when China just brutally walked into a small country of Tibet, took it over, and there were tremendous religious persecution of Buddhists. Several 100,000 of them crossed over from China or from Tibet into India, and they were like 10 to 15,000 came to Delhi. That's where I was growing up, and we saw them destitute. Tibet people came in, no food, no clothes, no place to live, and our parents told us, these people are looking different. We try to pick it up. These are refugees. They've been, be kind to them. And that's where I started learning about religion and all that. That's emotionally affected me a lot. And it's all the policies of CCP. Fast forward 35, 40 years into 97, 98 time frame. I was working for Texas Instrument Raytheon. I was getting ready to go to Saudi Arabia on business trip. 1 week before, there was a first test flight of aircraft called J-17 first test flight in China. And how it happened, only CIA knows. That test flight crashed. And in that test flight, one circuit board, as it is in full shape, built by Texas Instrument, fell out of this crash. And how it came in the hand of CIA, nobody knows. My business trip to Saudi Arabia got cancelled. Of course, CIA knows what happened, but we did not know. However, 20 years later, we know in 2018 onward, same play, J-17 is being co-produced by China and Pakistan, in Pakistan. So you can draw your conclusion where that Texas Instruments computer board came in, but these things have affected me in my professional life. 2002, I left Raytheon, started new technology company, Throughput Communications. We hired a senior scientist, not hired, but we gave a senior scientist from Verizon a board seat on our company. This is in 2002. And he gave us some scenario, what is going on from the telecommunications industry point of view. We were technologist people working in defense, but bringing defense in technology to telecommunications. He said, that time, Huawei is a very big new telecom company in China. And he said, the founder is the active member of CCP, and mark my word, in 10 to 15 years from now, it is going to be the world's biggest telecommunication company, and his daughter is going to run the company. Lo and behold, she, at least year and a half ago, she was the controller of the company at the behest of the US. She is in house arrest in China. And that same company has Huawei US headquarters right here in Collin County today. And in my view, if that gentleman from Verizon could forecast what is going to happen next 10 to 15 years from now, I can tell you from my experience working in US defense industries, whoever is sitting in the city hall in big cities like Plano, Allen, McKinney, mayors or city council member, they better be trained, prepared to deal with Huawei. Because our county is growing, companies are coming in, and that will become a big issue. So just, I feel like, think about it, that's a big issue, and that is another reason why I felt like we need to talk about what is going on between the US and China. And in last year, President Trump declared China as well as Huawei as national, security issue. And I feel like it's very timely that we have two speakers here. One is our guest from California, and the other is Dr. Ho, talk about it. So, to get started about this main topic, I would like Ms. Shirley Shah to come over and introduce our first speaker of the day, But before Shirley introduces our speaker, I want to introduce Shirley to you. Shirley is a very active Republican member of North Texas Republican Women's Club. And she is also into human rights and is very strong proponent of organization called Falun Gong. They are against, organ harvesting that goes on in China. And with her activism, our elected legislator right now, at this minute, are working on a legislation called House Bill HR 10 and SCR 3. It's going to pass. It's going to pass. It's hard work. But it behooves all of us to let our legislator in Austin, they're there, to please move forward and pass that bill. Thank you. Shirley.
Thank you. I just received an update, the latest update about SCR 3. This afternoon, it was unanimously passed by the Senate, on the Senate side. So the piece of paper that you have there needs to be updated. So all you have to do is call your House representatives. Senate, everybody has approved. So we're so pleased to learn about that. Okay, now let me introduce Dr. Chen. How it is very interesting how people meet with each other. Year 2016, 5 years ago, I came across Dr. Chen at a conference in New York. I was so impressed with her in-depth knowledge about China. And since then, we became very good friends. Dr. Chen was born in China, and I was born in Taiwan. So we were brought up in a very different culture. Communism versus democracy. But we are both rooted with traditional Chinese culture, and we're both proud of being a US citizen. We were determined to uphold moral values, and both of us were ashamed of CCP, the Chinese Communist Party's brutality, atrocity against humankind. I'm so thankful to have a friend to share the same values and the purpose of life. So my special thanks to Ravi for this important event, so that we can meet up in Dallas. Let's welcome Dr. Chen. Hello everyone, I'm so honored to be here. It's really unusual for me to travel to another state to give a talk. And I guess it's also kind of strange for you to see someone flying all the way from California to speak about her personal experience. Truly, I'm so honored to be here because I work as a biologist, as some of you may have read my bio. But I'm not going to talk about any science tonight. I'm going to talk about my personal experience, growing up in China and all of these years, my family's experience. I came to the United States in 1994 as a graduate student. Actually, I spent my first year in Dallas at the UT Southwestern Medical Center. Then I transferred to California to finish my graduate school. And there was one incident in 1995 that totally changed my view towards my homeland. It was in 1995. My American friends asked me about the Tiananmen massacre. And I'm sure all of you remember the Pac-Man picture. Worldwide news reported that. And in 1995, I was still a very, very brainwashed Chinese student. I said there was no massacre. I said all over China, we watched the TV, we saw the dead bodies of soldiers, and we know that students killed soldiers. And of course, the government of China never killed any student. And then, at the same time, like when my friends told me about all the videos and the pictures about Tiananmen massacre, I said Hollywood made them. That's what my government told me. It took me 5 years to awake from this kind of propaganda. And I remember in 2001 or so, I decided that I got enough. Like for the rest of my life, I'm going to spend as much time as I can to speak on what's going on in China, just because of the information barrage. Like very few Americans know what's going on there in the Chinese world, and very few Chinese dare to speak on this. And I regard this as my public service, like to contribute my knowledge to my audiences. And tonight I want to talk about the Communist Party's infiltration in the world. As I mentioned, in China, we were brainwashed not only about Tiananmen massacre, everything else we knew was censored in the news, and we were told a different story about the world. For example, North Korea, right? We were told that North Korea is a little brother of China, and they lived a wonderful life. North Korean kids, they eat 5 meals per day. They had so much food. I did not know that 10% of the population died in the big famine in the 1990s when we were told these lies. And when I told people about China, and many times the audience told me, who has time to listen about China? We're so busy. We need to deal with North Korea. We need to deal with Iran. We are busy with ISIS. Who has time to listen about China? But they may not realize, actually, we are in a battle against communism. And China is the center of this battle because behind North Korea, Iran, Cuba, ISIS, China is the center of this alliance by providing them money and technology. And for example, North Korea, China has been the major sponsor of North Korea by providing 90% of the trade with North Korea. Without China to provide the food and oil, North Korean regime will die within months. And China has been known that for providing nuclear materials to North Korea. In 2016 or so, this woman was indicted by U.S. Department of Justice for exporting nuclear material to North Korea. And she did not do that alone. In China, they have dozens of companies and banks. They work together in that building in the center of the picture. They were responsible for all this trade with North Korea. As a matter of fact, my husband used to work in one of these companies, and he had visited North Korea in the 1990s for business. And the Harbin Institute of Technology has been accepting scientists, like scholars and students from North Korea, and train them on nuclear technology. And that's how North Korea was able to develop all this technology. And China has been famous for selling US technology to Iran. For example, ZTE in 2017 was punished for exporting US technology to Iran, and Huawei did the same. And I'm not going to go through more details about this. Also, many people ask me, okay, what's wrong with the Communist Party? They're doing great in China. Why not that Communist Party take over the world? Maybe the US will live a better life. But in reality, the Communist Party has a long history of human rights abuses. My parents' generation survived the Great Famine in the 1950s. That's when the Communist Party said, okay, it's communism, everyone should submit food to the government, and we're going to distribute them equally. Everyone gets the same share. But they did not distribute them. About 30 to 40 million Chinese died from starvation. And it's still a taboo in China. People were not allowed to talk about the Great Famine in China. The Chinese government said it's a natural disaster, but nobody knew what kind of natural disaster happened at that time. It's purely human mistake. And my parents' generation also suffered from the Great Cultural Revolution in the 1960s and 1970s. That's when the Communist Party went to extreme. They said any education can give people independent thinking, then they can criticize the government. So they decided to shut down the whole education system in China for 10 years. There was no school in China for 10 years. And millions of pieces of antiques and all the ancient buildings were destroyed, and over 2 million intellectuals were killed or persecuted. They either died from persecution or they committed suicide. And that didn't end there. In 1989, the second generation leader, Deng Xiaoping, started the Tiananmen massacre. He killed over 10,000 Beijing citizens and students just because they protested on Tiananmen Square asking for democracy. And that is also a taboo in China now. Nobody are allowed to talk about it. And that did not end. Just 10 years later, Jiang Zemin, the third generation leader of Communist Party, started the persecution towards Falun Gong. This is a Chinese meditation, body and mind practice, rooted on traditional Chinese culture, with the principle truthfulness, compassion, and tolerance. Falun Gong has been famous for its health benefits, and is always taught for free because according to the teachings, nobody should make profit from that. And it's one of the most popular meditation all over the world. And in China, it's estimated about 17 million Chinese practice Falun Gong. The Chinese government not only detained millions of Falun Gong practitioners and killed many of them, they also use their organs for transplant. In the US, people typically wait for 3 years for organ donors. But in China, they can get it within 24 hours. Because the Chinese government have millions of Falun Gong, Uyghurs, and Christians in detention camps. All of them were blood type tested and ready to be killed, to be sold their organs, to sell their organs to the patients. And I'm not going to go through more details about that because I think you got flyers on your paper, and outside at the entrance there's a table of Falun Gong. They have their little lotus flowers and the flyers there. You can talk to them after the meeting to know more about this persecution that's currently happening in China. And the Communist Party is able to kill so many Chinese people and maintain their authority because they have been very successful in brainwashing Chinese people. The Chinese government controls every media in China, and they also censor every book, every art pieces, every film, and also their social media. Everything circulating in China had to go through censorship, and actually China had this censorship department to go through everything. And foreign media, like Hollywood films, are not allowed to enter China. They also need to be censored. I think each year they only allow about 1,000 films to be shown in China. And all these films, they have to be adapted according to the needs of the Communist Party. And internet in China, you can call it intranet instead of internet because they're blocked from outside world. The Great Firewall on the internet of China block all the social media in Western world. In China, you cannot read anything on Facebook, Twitter, you cannot watch YouTube. And there are over 2 million internet police trained by the Communist Party. So if you post something on internet, Chinese internet, something sensitive, or if you want to search on the internet about the Tiananmen massacre, within 1 hour, they're going to trace down your IP and knock at your door. They're very, very efficient at that, in that. And surveillance in communist China is beyond your imagination. China is the biggest surveillance country in the world. Neighborhood committee. Think about neighborhood committee in the US. They're very friendly, they organize events, they make everything happy. But in China, neighborhood committee has a different definition. Their job is to monitor every household in the block. See, what are you doing there at home? Are you more practicing Falun Gong? Then you're doing meditation, they're going to report you to the police. If you have some friends visiting, they'll figure out, have you been in contact with any dissidents? Like if you're in contact with some dissidents, like they're also going to report you to the police. And the Communist Party chapter is required in every company, every school, and every organization, including Western companies like Disney. They are required to sponsor a Communist Party chapter, and the company must pay for the cost, and they must allow at least one Communist Party member to sit in their board meetings. And China has over 200 million surveillance cameras installed already across the country, but the government says that's not enough. Their plans, like before next year, they want to have at least one surveillance camera covering 2 Chinese people. And they install surveillance cameras not only on the street, they also install them in school classrooms. They want to monitor what teachers are teaching so that they can come back to catch the teachers if they taught something wrong. And hardware is made in China. We have to be very careful about that because almost every hardware made in China, from cell phone to laptops, they would capture all the information you enter them and send the data to China, and including hardware sold in the US. For example, I would never use
any cell phone or computer made in China, because they would collect all the information and send them to the Chinese companies. And China passed the International Intelligence Law in 2017 that requires every company to submit data to the government whenever they're asked to. It's a law. So whenever you have a Chinese company running, collecting your data, don't trust what they tell you, because they're not allowed to hide their data from the government. Whenever the Chinese government wants it, they must submit it, otherwise they break the Chinese law. And Communist Party consulates all over the world has been acting as a spy hubs. So their primary duty is to monitor the activities of Chinese Americans, to find out who in the community is criticizing the government. Like as any Chinese citizen or any Chinese American, for example, you may need to go back to China, you may need to get a visa, or if you're a Chinese citizen living here on green card, you may need to renew your passport. And then they have the incentive to threaten you, not to criticize about human rights in China, otherwise they can cancel your passport or deny your visa. And they also force some Chinese Americans to act as their spies, because they have control of them, like otherwise they cannot go back to China. Or they can lure them to go to business trips in China. They not only lure Chinese Americans to these red carpet trips, but also elected officials in the US. Once they go to China, get this treatment, they sometimes fall into honey traps, and then the Chinese government can control them and have them act as agents for the Chinese government. Although they are US citizens, they are acting as spies for the Chinese government in the US. And the steal of intellectual property is everywhere. And I want to focus on the Southern Talents Program. And Chinese government has a long history of recruiting Chinese Americans, successful Chinese Americans, go back to China and to take your knowledge back. They say you need to serve your mother country. So in the 1950s, many successful Chinese Americans went back to China and brought world-leading technologies. That was how China was able to have this nuclear technology, all this great progress on technology in the 1950s. But then later, in the 1960s, during the Cultural Revolution, most of these Chinese Americans, they were persecuted, and many of them died during the Cultural Revolution, because the government saw they're useless, and then they were ditched. But they're still doing it now. Like the Southern Talents Program run by the Chinese government recruit the most successful Americans, or in other Western countries, to build shadow labs in China. So for example, the US government has been sponsoring many world-leading research projects. And these researchers, they are recruited to go back to China to build up shadow labs. Whatever they do in the US, they copy it in China. That's one of the major ways for the Chinese government to steal the technology. And they also actually send spies, excuse me, as students or visiting scholars to top research labs in the US. And I will not go through more details on this because of time limit. And the US media and education system and also Hollywood has been heavily infiltrated by the Chinese government. Do you remember, if you ever read the Washington Post, you may have noticed that they have this insertion called China Watch. You may think, oh, it's a blog run by the Chinese, by Washington Post, but actually they are paid ads by the Chinese government. And the Chinese government has been paying ads on at least 30 mainstream newspapers worldwide. New York Times, Washington Post, the Wall Street Journal, LA Times, and they pay for the advertisement. But these advertisements do not look like advertisement. This is one example of LA Times last year on April 29th. They had, LA Times, that particular issue had 38 pages. And 11 pages of them were paid ads by the Chinese government called International Daily. They just look like any other article in LA Times. But all these articles highly praise the Communist Party on how they deal with coronavirus, how great they are in taking care of their people. And when people read that, they say, LA Times said China is doing a great job, and China must have been doing a great job. And the US just started to take action against the media infiltration by labeling some Chinese media as foreign missions, and I think the list can go much longer than that. And in the universities, any scholars studying Chinese history face a dilemma. If they speak the truth about the Chinese history, about the truth about how the Communist Party killed intellectuals during the Cultural Revolution or the Great Famine, they have big trouble because if they ever visited China, they can be arrested for that. And some professors were already arrested and took our Congress a great hassle to bring him back. And most of these researchers, they chose to leave the field, or they can lie. They can say something pro-Communist Party. Then they can get red carpet treatment if they go to China. And they may even get fundings for that. And this kind of like a differential treatment cause a long-term, but very subtle, but very long-term self-censorship among American scholars. It takes great courage to speak the truth. And publishers, like we're talking about scientific journals, political science journals, and they are pressured by the Chinese government to remove contents that Beijing does not want. For example, Cambridge Press in 2017 agreed to remove several hundred articles because Beijing said if you don't remove these articles, you cannot access Chinese market. So the Cambridge removed those articles, but of course later on people started to protest. And some of these publishers put articles back. And Confucius Institute is a free Chinese program operated by the Chinese government in over 100 universities in the US and more than 500 high schools. But don't be confused by the name. They don't teach Confucianism. They teach Communist Party's version of history. You cannot teach anything about Tiananmen, Tibet, or like Taiwan there. And teachers must sign a contract that they cannot practice Falun Gong. And oftentimes in local universities, like University of Maryland, Confucius Institute blocks the university from inviting Dalai Lama to come to give a commencement speech. And on the website of Confucius Institute, people discovered this video program about history, about Korean War. It said in Chinese that Americans started with the Korean War because Americans wanted to invade North Korea, they invaded China. That was exactly what I learned about the Korean War when I was a student in China. But we're talking about Stanford University. We're talking about UCLA, all these top universities in the US. We pay tens of thousands of dollars for our children and grandchildren to go to these top universities. We're so proud of the education they get. Then the university outsourced the Chinese teaching to their local Confucius Institute, and then these students get brainwashed by the Chinese government. And the US just started to take actions against Confucius, the infiltration to the Chinese academic system, to the US academic system, by labeling it as a foreign mission and stopped giving fundings to universities running Confucius Institute. So a university, they choose to run Confucius Institute, they cannot get federal funding to sponsor their Chinese programs. And because of that, about 40% of Confucius Institutes already closed. But we need to continue this effort until every one of them closed in the US. And China has been actively buying Hollywood. AMC Theater is the biggest cinema chain in the US. It was bought by a Chinese company, Dalian Wanda, in 2012. The same company bought Carmike Theaters, it's another big cinema chain. They also bought Legendary Entertainment. Remember the film, Jurassic Park? That's a filmmaking company for Jurassic Park. But once this entertainment industry belongs to a Chinese mother company, they must follow Chinese government's rule about what kind of film they can make and what kind of film they can show. Think about it, in Hollywood, when was the last time you saw a film about human rights in China? Very few of them has guts to say anything about this. And oftentimes in a Hollywood film, you will say someone went to Mars and cannot come back, and then the Chinese government sent a space shuttle to rescue them. And these kind of subtle, very subtle elements gradually planted this ideology in the mind of Americans in their entertainment programs. Say, hey, China is doing great. Like Chinese people, they are friends of us. Chinese government, they are friends of us. They can come to rescue Americans when we are in trouble. And unfortunately, we haven't done much in Hollywood. And at the same time, the infiltration to the US government, more and more are exposed recently. And oftentimes, Chinese government have been supporting their favorite candidates through local Chinese American organizations. For example, as I mentioned in my previous speech, like in my previous slides, if you're Chinese American, oftentimes you want to go to China to do business, to visit friends, to visit your family, and then the Chinese government can give you pressure, say, hey, you want to go back to China, you want to renew your passport or get a visa, you'd better endorse that candidate. And they also hire top PR firms, public relations firms, and retired US government officials to lobby for the Chinese government. For example, one of the former California US Senator, Barbara Boxer, now works as a lobbyist for one of the top Chinese companies. And they also invite officials to China for red carpet treatment. And I visit Washington, D.C. every summer to meet my elected officials and talk to them and urge them to take actions on human rights in China. And we noticed that some elected officials, after they went to these kind of trips to China, they don't want to meet us anymore. That's very typical. And remember, a few years ago, we saw this big news about Dianne Feinstein, the California's federal Senate. One of his drivers, they said he worked for Dianne Feinstein for 20 years. He turned out to be a Chinese spy. Do you believe for 20 years Dianne Feinstein was never influenced by this spy? Nobody would believe that. And one real example, in 2017, California tried to pass a statewide resolution condemning organ harvesting in China. And before that resolution was voted, the Chinese consulate in San Francisco called the Senate president. They also sent one email to every Senate members urging them to block that resolution. And the Senate blocked that resolution. That was just one example. The Chinese consulate can send emails, make phone calls to our elected officials and tell them what to do. And some elected officials would do that. And now talk about internationally, like how about United Nations? Like say, hey, United Nations must be good, right? Now I want to mention about China's Belt and Road project. It sounds like a great project. China approached all these developing countries who have economic problems, saying, hey, we're going to come to help you. We're going to build this luxury airport for you. Don't worry about the money. We're going to give you a loan. You can pay us later. And oftentimes, they would bribe the elected officials of these countries. They send money to their personal account, and then these officials will sign contract, and then the project will go on. And then after the project is done, the country will say, uh-oh, the bill is so big, like we can't pay for the loan. What are we going to do? And China will say, oh, don't worry, just let us use your airport or this infrastructure for 99 years. Actually, Sri Lanka lost one of its most important ports to China because it cannot pay for the Belt and Road loan. And because of this, China is able to expand its military influence all over the world. And they are also able to control, the United Nations. Let me see, how can I go back to the previous slides? Okay, it's okay. So, as we mentioned, like in my previous slides, like United Nations, the rule of United Nations, like every country has one vote. Just think about the Belt and Road project. They already control more than 150 countries, and most of these countries would vote according to the need of China. So under United Nations, there are 15 agents, and China already lead 4 of them. And in the other 11 agents of the United Nations, China also hold important positions. Think about the World Health Organization, WHO. Think about their bizarre behavior during the pandemic. They just copied every word Chinese government told them to. They never did any independent investigation. Why? Because the leader of WHO was from Ethiopia, and that's one of the allies of China in the Belt and Road project. So it's not difficult to explain that United Nations, they will not take any serious action. Like anything that like the Chinese government do not like, they will not take any action against the Chinese government. And now we talk about like a Communist Party. How come they have gained so much power? And they are powered by trade. Without the money, they would not have been able to do so. For decades, American business owners, they went to China to do business. They have this naive thinking, say, once we start a trade with China, automatically the communists would embrace freedom, embrace democracy. I'm sorry, that was so naive. It did not happen. China used slave labor and cheap labor. So you can imagine Chinese people only got a small percentage of benefits from the trade. The Communist Party took the most benefit, and that's why they had so much money to monitor Chinese, to come back, to buy our media, to buy our university, to buy Hollywood, to buy the Americans. And through this process, they also have like this intellectual property theft, because whenever Western companies do business in China, Chinese government control the market. They say, you want a Chinese market? Yes, give us your technology so that you can enter the market. And after these American Western companies gave technology to China, the government immediately gave the competitors in China. And eventually, these Western companies were driven out of the market. And that happened like to Cisco, to like Yahoo, to many Western companies. Eventually, they will have to leave the market. And Western companies in China, on human rights, they did not perform a good role. Cisco helped the Chinese government to build the Great Firewall of Internet. And Yahoo gave their users email contents to the Chinese police. They said, hey, we have to follow Chinese government's rule if we do business in China. And quite a few Chinese reporters, they trusted Yahoo mails. So they used the Yahoo email to discuss the policy of Chinese government, how the Chinese government blocks them from reporting Tiananmen massacre related events. And these reporters, because Yahoo gave away their contents, they were sentenced to 80 years, 10 years in prison because of Yahoo. Although the Communist Party is actively expanding its influence all over the world, back in China, they are still starting to have trouble. Ever since the Communist Party took over China, they had no problem wiping out anyone within 3 months, because Chinese people were already used to remain silent towards injustice. They said, hey, nobody can say no to the Communist Party, let's just remain silent, just to protect ourselves. But the Falun Gong was an exception, because this is a group follow the principle of truthfulness, compassion, and tolerance. According to their teachings, they must speak out when they see injustice. Between 1999 and 2001, Falun Gong practitioners, they went to public to protest all over China. They hold their little banners at truthfulness, compassion, tolerance, asking for their rights to meditate. That scene, lasting for 2 years, shocked the Chinese society. Everyone said, wow, Falun Gong, they're so brave. They protest, they say no to the Communist Party just for their rights to meditate. And how come we cannot protest for our rights? Nowadays, if you visit China, you see thousands of different groups protesting for their rights. But Falun Gong went underground in 2001. They started to print flyers and make DVDs at home and distribute to their neighbors and talk to their friends and families and awake them from propaganda. And outside of China, in US, in Canada, in Europe, there are quite a few Falun Gong practitioners who are also computer scientists. They formed 3 major companies to write free softwares to help Chinese people to bypass the Great Firewall of Internet. And they have been having constant competition with the Chinese Communist Party regime. Nowadays, about 30% of Internet users in China regularly use these softwares to bypass Great Firewall, to find out what's happening in the world and what's happening in China. And that started the great human rights movement in China. China started to have human rights lawyers. People started to sign petitions to support victims. But what encouraged me the most is the trend of quitting the Communist Party. Communist Party runs like a mafia. They would identify the best students, the best teacher, the most successful business owners. They recruit you to join. And then you cannot say no. If you say no, you have big trouble. And once you join the party, you must pay for the fee. You must join all the activities of the Communist Party to persecute your fellow Chinese. And you cannot quit. If you quit, you have big trouble. So in 2004, some volunteers in San Diego, California, started a website that allowed Chinese people to send their statements via internet, of course, through these VPNs, to bypass the Great Firewall. They can post these statements on this website, say, I want to quit the Communist Party. I want to quit the youth league of the Communist Party. That's for the high schoolers. Or I want to quit the young pioneers of the Communist Party. That's for middle schoolers and elementary students. And then they get a digital certificate for quitting the Communist Party with a unique serial number belonging to them. And this unique certificate for each individual is recognized by the US government as an official document of quitting the Communist Party. I became a US citizen in 2013. When I was naturalized, I had to answer a standard question. Everyone must answer this question. Have you ever joined a Nazi, ISIS, or Communist Party? If the answer were yes, I cannot be a US citizen, then I can submit this digital certificate to say, hey, I quit the party from this website. And the immigration office recognizes as an official document of quitting the party. And on this website, I just tracked 2 days ago, about 317 million Chinese people already quit the Communist Party and its affiliated organizations. And I found that really encouraging, because when Soviet Union collapsed, people say, hey, miracle. Sorry, it's not a miracle. For decades, people there have been abandoning communism. And that's why you see the change overnight. And we are seeing the same thing happening in China. And I believe that the human rights movement is bringing China to a great future, and also bring the world to the great future. But we need to support them in the US to take actions. And I want to mention about the 2 resolutions that the state of Texas is working on. And I heard from Shirley that the state Senate resolution was just passed today unanimously, condemning forced organ harvesting in China. And the House will also have a similar solution coming soon. And all of you, every individual of you, can take your action to talk to your elected officials. And I'm so honored to be here today to speak to all of you. As I mentioned, I'm nobody. I'm just myself. I'm a concerned Chinese American. I do not affiliate to any organization. I just fly here to see my friend Shirley, and I'm so happy to stay with Rabi. And I believe every one of us can take action to stop these atrocities in China. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Chen. An enormous speech, very powerful. Thank you. We'll come back to you with question and answer later on. Is Professor Carl Ho here? Yeah, good, thank you. 1 second. Before we bring the next speaker, just one quick thing. We had invited Plano Star Courier. They said they may be here. Is the Plano Star Courier person here? Okay. We do have some press here from, sir, you're from Epoch Time? Yeah. Okay. You want to say any few words before we go into next speaker? Is anybody else from Epoch Time here? Would you like, later on? Okay, thank you. Okay, our next speaker is Professor Carl Ho. He is going to talk basically same topic, but concentrate more, I think, on Hong Kong and Taiwan. Professor, but before that, can I have Fred Moses introduce Professor, please.
Thank you very much. Okay.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank everyone for being here. Wow, this is quite a subject, and for us to be informed about, and to know that these things are happening, and that we all need to be concerned about the welfare of our fellow man. Amen. Amen. Okay. All right. Y'all are not in church, but you can still say amen. 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 Okay. Very good. Okay. Okay. Tonight we are honored to have as another second speaker, Professor Carl Ho, is a political scientist at the University of Texas at Dallas. He teaches political and economics and public policy in Eastern Asia. His research focuses on East Asian and Chinese Taiwan-U.S. relationship. He is the organizer of UTD Taiwan Democracy Symposium, and he was awarded the Taiwan Fellow in 2018 and studied Taiwan New Southbound Policy He is originally from Hong Kong, started off as a journalist major and professor of journalism after graduation. He's traveled in China extensively, covering stories during the country's embarkment of economic reforms. He has been a native in Taiwan elections and democratic research and comparative analysis of politism in Taiwan and the U.S. Let's welcome Dr. Ho.
Thank you very much. Actually, the honors are mine. Thank you for hosting my talk and allowing me to share my research. Oh, okay, thank you. All right, don't worry about it. Okay, don't worry. I'm doing good. I'm here. All right. This is really a great honor for me to share my findings for research about Hong Kong, Taiwan, China, and particularly U.S. I'm an American citizen, and I came from Hong Kong in 1990, and that was back then as a British Hong Kong. So I was brought up in British education, and then I was trained as a journalist, and I had a chance to become a professional journalist for a paper called Hong Kong Standard, and I wrote for this paper and covering the legislative issues, and then I also traveled to China. I love traveling to different places in China, seeing many different Chinese people, and then one thing that changed my mind when I see the reality of the open reform in 1987, and then that is the time that I decided I think I should move on to get more education myself, and so I made a decision to come to the U.S. to study political science. And on one trip that I traveled to China for 40 days, and I backpacked and went to the remote areas, went to Beijing, went to Chengdu, and went to places maybe I had not heard of to you, and but I met with the people there. I loved the people there, until I believe that China's reform is coming to an impasse, because they cannot accept the political reform. Then I saw in my bare eyes and how the protesters, a lot of them students, were greeted with violence, rejection, and eventually their wishful thinking got dashed by the really brutal, bloody crackdown in Beijing. So all over these years, I think I was in a really privileged and position because I was in China. My parents were from China. I was brought up in Hong Kong, British Hong Kong. Then I came to US for education. I owe everything to this nation because if it's not for education, I would not be like today's me. Then I get to teach a subject I really love, and that I have a dream to drive my research, my effort in teaching Chinese politics, teaching Taiwan and Hong Kong democratization, because I really want the people in these places can enjoy what we are experiencing here. I am so compelled to change the topic and use these strong words for this talk, and I believe that this is the moment that we need to face the reality. We are in a clear and present danger, and particularly when you look at Hong Kong, Taiwan, and in the topic of U.S. national security. Quickly, I will talk about what I want to organize this talk about, and so why Taiwan, Hong Kong matter to U.S. national security. Then I want to talk about what is at stake. I am looking at this from my American scholar point of view. So you may see me as a Chinese descendant and see me as a Hong Konger, but I wrote this because I'm an American researcher. Then I want to talk about, for my fellow Americans, what is at stake. Then I will talk about clear danger that is happening in Hong Kong and what is the present danger to Taiwan. Then I want to talk about the U.S. policies, current policies that can put our national security at risk. And 3 A's: ambiguity, agenda setting power, and appeasement. Then I will talk about different scenarios. All right, now, I think I will skip this slide and go directly to some clip. And I don't know whether this will have sound, but I want to give you an image, quite vivid, because today, April 14 is named National Security Day in Hong Kong. I don't know how coincidental it is, but this is sadly coincidental to the Hong Kong students. And let me see if I can show you some footage, and may not be a sound, just don't worry, they do not have the video available, but I want to show you some pictures. So this is a picture that the children, the school children, were forced to stand in front of the Chinese flag, and then they have to march the Chinese ways now. And in the past, Hong Kong used the British marching style, and you can tell they're basically from the traditional British style, and paying tribute to the Union Jack and sort of respect to the Queen. Then now you can see from the picture, they have to march the Soviet manner. The Soviet manner and the Chinese manner. And this may be new image to you because it disappeared for decades. And in Hong Kong, in Western world now, a freer city in the world that have to adapt to this style. And that really reminded me of something happened like in the 1930s, 1940s. How these policemen have to march the Soviet way, the older German way, that's actually. Now, and so look at these children, and I don't know how much a celebrating mode they have. Are they really excited, exhilarated, or seeing their or starting this first National Security Day because of the imposition of this national security law in Hong Kong. And I saw this little guy with the glasses on, whether he's meditating or he's really thinking about his future. And I have strong feelings about these children. And now, side note, in Hong Kong identity, and the red line is to show how much Hong Kong people will identify themselves as Chinese. So you can see the early days, and this is, I should have printed up in a bigger font, 1997 is still a rise, and then come up and down, and still constant rise until 2008. 2008, still see the peak here. There, this is the peak when the Hong Kong people really celebrate their Chinese identity. And you remember what happened in 2008, there was Olympic Games. So the Hong Kong people were really up-spirited, and they were at home watching the game and seeing medals and a building, a number, and now from that point onward, and less Hong Kong people call themselves Chinese. And you can see the yellow line here is the Hong Kong identity going up. So I can see this little young children made to salute to the Chinese flag. He had to call himself a Chinese openly. Maybe until he can meet his friends in private, whether he call himself a Hong Konger. Okay, now this is Hong Kong, this is Chinese identity. Now, maybe I should talk about U.S. What is at stake to us? What is our national interest in Hong Kong? Why it matters to us? Number one, 7 million population, and among them, 85,000 Americans. So it could have most Americans, one of the areas that has most Americans in that Asia-Pacific area, except our military bases. And in Taiwan, it should be about 10,000. In Japan, I don't know, but it will not be about this number. 85,000 Americans in Hong Kong. And 1,300 firms, American firms. And it is the single largest U.S. trading partner for trade service. So we really get a lot to export to Hong Kong. And most importantly, this is the entry port for U.S. firm to ship things to China. They stop by Hong Kong. The important thing is Hong Kong is still protected by a few things that is at the heart of the U.S. interest. Number one, it has a currency system that is intimately tied to the American dollars. And it is called the PEG system. And it's one of the few countries, or first countries, to peg its own currency to US dollars. That means it's not a fixed rate, but close to a fixed rate, 61.8 Hong Kong dollars, and there are rules for floating, but that is basically tied to US dollars. And some numbers you may not have read in the US media. Hong Kong is one of the countries or places holding highest foreign currencies in US dollars. The number one is China, 3 trillion, about 3 trillion, 1.4 trillion. Number two is Japan, but a small place called Hong Kong holding this place on number 7. But if you look at the foreign reserve by people per capita, it's the highest in the world. And you can have 500 billion in Hong Kong. And looking at more data, and Hong Kong government is counting on US dollars to really fund its operation, about 200 billions. And Hong Kong people trust US dollars. And I think the count savings could be triple this number. And with the foundations Hong Kong government has, and also the Hong Kong people saving. Now more and more Hong Kong people are moving their assets or properties to US dollars now, through some banks in Hong Kong, and because they're not in full trust in Hong Kong dollars anymore, and not to mention the Chinese currency called renminbi. Now, the stock market capitalization is huge. It's so big that I was shocked. It's at 6 trillion. 6 trillion. And it could fund U.S. expenditure for almost half a year, and then pay for all expenses for the American government for 6 months. And so why is this important to us? And because it's one of the important trading partner and with the safest window to trade with China. I don't know anyone is investing in China, but how much you can put in will not be equivalent to how much you can take out. So China will have some capital control, and if you do that in Hong Kong, that is different. Then you can get money out anytime, put in the money anytime. It's the safest window to trade China because of three things. Number one, it is basically, I said basically, using the British legal system. And number two, it is a bilingual society. You cannot find more people who can speak American English or English, British English, than Hong Kong in any Asian societies. And Japan, not much. Taiwan, some. And Singapore, maybe. Singapore, I think is comparable, but they have a smaller population. South Korea, not close. So that is the really bilingual society, only bilingual society that is best assets for American investors. But also there's one thing called the laissez-faire system, and Hong Kong is the freest city, not one of the freest city until 2019. In 2020, it was demoted to number 2 and surpassed by Singapore. But unfortunately, in 2021, according to the Heritage Foundation, Hong Kong is not even in the rank. Hong Kong is totally removed from the whole list because according to Heritage Foundation, this is very clear. It can only include countries exercising full sovereign control over their economic policies. Hong Kong has demonstrated so well how much an authoritarian country can supersede a free economy. So we let that happen, unfortunately. Then U.S. national interest is diminishing. Now there's one story that can really tell the story impressively. U.S. government sold consulate properties in Hong Kong. Our government bought in about 1940s and 50s at about 33 million. Then we sold it at 330 million in February. So actually, those properties has been risen, increased from 33 million to how much? 3.5 billion US dollars. So 3.3 billion for a few buildings, this is really unbelievable. That is really the case. But US still has to sell it at 5% of the estimated market price. Because US consulate back, last year believed that if they do not sell it, this will become worthless. So the Chinese government blocks such a sale and don't let the market work for American sellers, and then because it become a really hostage issue until later in February, and allow American government to sell it at only 330 millions. So one of the latest surveys by American Chamber of Commerce in Hong Kong found that the 1,300 firms, these business leaders, investors, they are almost overwhelmingly pessimistic about Hong Kong. So they don't think Hong Kong has a future. And Hong Kong is really on the decline and decay, but that is not something really remote to us. If Hong Kong loses its current international position, this is what is happening to us. US has to find an alternative to trade with China if it still wants to trade with China. Will you choose Shanghai, Taipei, or Singapore? None of them could be really a good candidate to replace Hong Kong. None. And not even close. Singapore is also in a very difficult situation dealing with China. And Taipei cannot do it, Japan cannot do it, unless you want to do it in Shanghai or Shenzhen. And China will leverage Hong Kong's separate special status, affecting US dollars. So indeed, this is something China is doing now. Don't forget, China has two currencies. One is its own renminbi, the other one is Hong Kong dollar, which is basically pegged to US dollars. So what it can do is to sell properties or assets to products and get Hong Kong dollars, American dollars, but you can buy it in renminbi. So that presents a really big hole for U.S. investors or international investors. Imagine that. That hole could be as big as 6 trillion US dollars. This is nothing like some changes, like a few millions. This is really a big hole unless we really pay attention to it. This 6 trillion is not stopping there. It could be more. That today, 6 trillion, tomorrow will be 8 trillions if more and more people go into the Hong Kong stock market. And it will be a blow to American interest and most importantly, the value of believing. Why? Since President Wilson introduced his principle of self-determination after the First World War, Hong Kong is the only place, this is the only population never given the right to talk about their destiny. So that is totally against what we promised to the world. And every country benefit from Woodrow Wilson's principle of self-determination, but only Hong Kong people was left behind. Democracy, market economy, freedom, individualism, and American values, American culture, and anything that we as Hong Kongers truly believe in, truly look up to, will be gone. So that would be a big blow to American interest. That could be the biggest blow to American interest since Pearl Harbor. Now, I think I have some more about Taiwan, and I don't have much time left, but I want to quickly talk about why U.S. national interest in Taiwan is also at high stake. 23 million population, and you may see that we do not have many Americans in Taiwan or Taipei, these big cities, but Americans can go to this place totally free for 90 days, come and go, stay there as long as you want to. But if Taiwan is gone and Americans cannot put a step on this Taiwan soil that easy. It is the sixth highest foreign reserve for the whole world, and just one step higher than Taipei, Taiwan, and about 340 billions. And it is a sizable GDP, 1.3 trillion, about 116, maybe even more than most of the states here, maybe only a few states. And 10th largest US trading partner, and supporting more than 200,000 jobs, and this number is going up. And leaders on one important thing is Taiwan holds the key to the high-end semiconductor markets. So that means your phone, the next generation of phones, and chances are the chips are made in Taiwan. Now, fortunately and unfortunately, this technology is the holy grail for all the countries who want to control the world. That semiconductor technology is enabling us Americans to lead the world in technologies like mobile phones, AI, supercomputers, and medical devices, everything that needs to be driven by semiconductors. Now imagine these manufacturing plants will be taken over by Chinese. So that means we will be begging a communist party to give us the chips in order that we can use our phone. This is not an easy to forget matter. Now, one more thing is about U.S. troops in Asia. And we have about 131,000. mostly in Japan, South Korea, and Singapore, a small portion in Singapore. Now this is a map that we must pay attention to, or maybe I hope you will see the picture here. And usually I show it to my students, and we look into every country when we can. Now, this is a very important part for US and China relations. If Taiwan and Hong Kong, or Hong Kong alone taken over by People's Liberation Army, PLA, so what they can do is target only one place, is called Taiwan. Now, if they taken Taiwan, Okinawa cannot do much to really secure the area. That will open a window to run into Guam. That is our territory. That is our front door to Asia. That is our people there, our children there, soldiers there. So I'm not exaggerating. Things are happening really fast now, and I will give you some pictures. So Biden's policy on China, and this is something that I want to bring to your concern, bring to your attention. Number one, and Biden reiterate official relations with China, and Biden did do some, make some speeches, make some reactions, but rare compared to the previous administration. When you bring up Hong Kong to the president, he probably be quiet. Chances are he will be going away, walking away. Now, this is what he did to China, and he's sending John Kerry, an official cabinet member, to China next week. And they met with the Chinese officials in Alaska in last month, and Biden made a phone call to see. This is what he did so far. So he is sending Christopher Dodd to Taiwan and Taipei, but it's an official delegation, not much to say. Very minded. Dr. Chen mentioned about Hollywood. He's the big guy in Hollywood. In case you do not know, he is one of the key leaders of the businesses in Hollywood, and it's more like a symbolism than doing anything natural. When you talked about Hong Kong, and we bring up Hong Kong to Blinken or Biden, chances are they will say we do not endorse this. We are very mad. We are very sad. And, boom, 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 nothing, no action. So Biden reiterated strategic competition. He only said it's competition only, extreme competition, but not confrontation. But to our previous president, and his bottom line is clear. Let's make it very clear. China is the biggest adversary, no question about it. And Biden has been really ambiguous about this, and he's not really facing this issue. For Taiwan, Blinken just said, U.S. a series of commitment to Taiwan being able to defend itself. In other words, when they come, when the PLA comes, and you defend yourself, we will be there, maybe helping you by saying a few words. Head in there. That is something really imminent. Now for China, let me give you some updates in case the US media did not give you. And for China believing because Biden will be a brave of it. Indeed, this has been showing that lots of words, lots of talks, lots of negotiations, but actions, I don't see much actions. Global Times in China endorsed semi-official media, said there's an opportunity to break through, rebuilding trust and cooperation, talk, dialogue, and mutually beneficial to each other. The personal advisor to Xi Jinping, the president, suggests that relations may still be worse, but still not as quickly. And containment of China could be expected, but that's it. And there will be more sanctions on Hong Kong. Xinjiang officials unlikely. And then look at the tech companies. And maybe Rafi can know better than I do. What is Huawei now? and now in Canada, Huawei saying that this CFO could be free soon. Huawei ban could be lifted soon, and more TikTok and WeChat sanctions. Now I know the time is running out, but I will do something quite, what is called clear danger. There will be over 200,000 people are thinking or moving already to other places, UK and Canada. And Hong Kong is losing all friends, losing the financial center, losing the FDIs especially. Look, now the dissidents, or the formerly called pan-democrats, or the opposition leaders, they are disenfranchised, they cannot run, they cannot be nominated, they cannot vote because they are in jail. Now, under national security law, more and more running out, more and more arrested, more and more disappearance, more and more people falling from the high rises, more floating bodies in the seaside, thousands arrested or in prison, and more opposition leaders will be in jail, and rest they are banned from departure. I'm sorry about the part. And some bills passed mostly from the Trump administration. And, but I want to say a few things about Taiwan. And Taiwan is facing PLA Air Force threat every day. I think you may not know that. The fighter jets are flying over Taiwan every day, not every month. Now, this is really underreported in the US. Now, this is the technologies are there. Now, they use our weapons. What if they are fallen? That means our weapon, our technology will fall in the hands of these competitors, quote unquote. Now, I showed you the really important geopolitical position of Taiwan. And now, PLA just a few days ago fly a formation of 25 warplanes, fighter jets, into the air defense zone in Taiwan. So that means they are picking the fight. They are picking the fight maybe while I'm talking now. So PLA's response, get used to it. This is literal translation of the PLA response. They want to take over the US air control in that area, the Taiwan air traffic zone. That means they can take over Taiwan in time. This is their planes, and I have some more pictures to show. Now this is one more picture to show. So this is the actual data. This is the actual encounter of face-to-face with two US and China PLA vessels. They are that close, maybe just 100-meter close. And the Chinese fighter pilot said, Taiwan, all ours. This is nothing more than picking a fight here. Now, let me wrap up. There are three things we must avoid. This is all the ambiguity. If we slow to respond, China leader will take lead and take for granted US will not act. If US is not clear and without action, China will push the envelope. The triangular equilibrium, China, US, and Taiwan, those days are gone because Hong Kong is gone. Taiwan is much more important. Taiwan will not accept the Chinese proposal one country system. And the balance power is structurally different. Now, and number two, as Senator said, we are basically accepting what China proposes. Let's not talk about Xinjiang, let's not talk about Taiwan, let's talk about Hong Kong, just talk about climate change. They will send John Terry there. So, Xi and his followers are using this to convince the Chinese population China is in control now. And Alaska meeting is to Chinese. This meeting is to show the Chinese population. Now, Chinese leaders can take a position to tower over the US diplomats and give them a lecture. This is exactly what happened. Why this is why there's a national celebration in China. National. They even printed on the t-shirts. Now, number three, appeasement. If US, Americans, every one of us turns a blind eye to Hong Kong and Taiwan, it says the precedent. This precedent is totally historic. and allow a free city built on Western values and Washington consensus to success, that will come to a fall. Now, this is two very important history lessons I want to remind everyone, every soul in this room. Imagine, U.S. gave up Berlin. Let Soviet Union take over Berlin. There won't be a West Germany, it won't be a Germany now. It won't be the fall of the Iron Curtain. Number two, Chamberlain and Daladier let go of Czechoslovakia. What happened? What happened for that so-called Munich Agreement? This is what we are stepping into, this Munich Agreement, to allow someone take over Hong Kong, someone take over Taiwan. Then we are coming to say, let's talk about climate change. Concluding, U.S. is dangerously close to repeating history in the face of unchecked pressure, and Dr. Chen gave so much evidence already, I don't have to repeat that. Losing Hong Kong will not be inconsequential, will not be nothing happening to us. It will come to us really with grave results. Losing Taiwan will be like another Pearl Harbor. That no one can disagree that, because this is so important. We cannot lose the beacon of democracy and freedom in Asia, and we cannot lose the semiconductor industry. And Asia-Pacific situation is begging for actions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Carver. I just cannot repeat how important this speech is. Trust me, I said that in our club last year. We have pretty much lost Hong Kong. If we're going to lose Taiwan, I am sorry, but our free world is over. Trust me, our free world is over. I am very disappointed. I was expecting much bigger turnout here. This message here is very important. We need more people here. You see, US is producing only 12% of the semiconductors. Taiwan is producing 15%. We just had a small tremor. We cannot produce our cars because they shorted of semiconductors. Wake up, America. I'm telling you, Hong Kong was tremor. If we lose Taiwan, free world is over. And I'm very disappointed. We should have had much bigger turnout here for people to get educated in Collin County and rest of America. I'm going to open, I think we need to repeat this thing and bring a better and bigger audience here in future. And luckily we are videotaping, we need to repeat this. But I'm going to open now for question and answer. Randy, please, he has speaker. Anybody has question, he will bring the speaker. Both speakers, please come to the podium for question and answer. Thank you.
One area that nobody's spoken about tonight, the Philippines. Used to work in Asia a lot and have a lot of people who I know who are still involved. And one of the more disturbing things they've seen has been the infiltration of Chinese influence within the very strategic Philippines. And Duterte appears to have moved away from the U.S. and seeing his future with China. What should we be doing in the Philippines? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think this is an excellent question. I think you must have read my slides ahead. I reserved a few slides for Q&A. What can we do? And I actually want to put the COVID first, but I will come back to this when we have time. And we must present clear and resolute actions. And actually, one of the very important spots is the Philippines. If you remember the map I presented to you, Philippines is sitting at the belly, the soft belly of China's South China Sea. This is why China is putting so much, the Chinese government is putting so much investment to monopolize those, militarize those islands. It is eyeing on taking Myanmar, the Philippines, Vietnam, Malaysia, and Singapore. So unfortunately, our base, our military are not there anymore. I mean, we can do some in Okinawa, and if we can do more actions to build and consolidate strategic allies with the Philippines, that will be like a really big action, really big dash into the BRI plan and allowing China to really take over the whole region. Now that will be the time, I believe that there will be more time if the whole Sub-ASEAN BRI is coming into fruition, taking over the Philippines, taking over Myanmar, because it's basically controlling the root of the oil and controlling the root of the over 50% of the global freight by ships. So the Suez Canal and Malaysia, Singapore, and so the whole Pacific is basically blockade. So this is why the Philippines is so important. So this is what I suggest. We need to go back to these countries. I think Vietnam could be the most promising because it's opening up, could have a full democracy next year, open elections. Then we must go on to Taiwan, and if it is needed, we really need to send the troops there. And for long stationing troops in that area, then Vietnam, the Philippines will be the allies we must not lose. Yeah, thank you for bringing it up. Yeah, thank you.
And I couldn't agree with you more. In my belief, Hong Kong is done. If you go to Hong Kong, and I was there year before last, all the development, you go to Macau, all the development's going on the mainland China side. Okay? Now they have moved a lot of financial operations into Shanghai already. I mean, before you used to be able to go to Shanghai, it was a wonderful city. You went to Hong Kong and it just blew Shanghai out of the water. Right? That's not the case anymore. Today, Shanghai is positioned by China to take over Hong Kong.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah. On the Taiwanese side, they are very close allies of ours. The problem that you have is that in order to be able to defend Taiwan, right, presently, today, we don't have enough troops or aircraft to be able to do that. The Chinese have been building artificial islands, the Spratly Islands. All of that is to be able to launch aircraft and launch ships. So my fear is that the political climate in Washington, D.C. today will, as you said, bow to the Chinese. And the Chinese do believe that they are the superpower for the world today.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
I can think of a couple things that I would do to promote safety for the United States and liberty for China. One is to be informed, to find that paper that you can trust, to find a news source that you can realize is not full of propaganda. The media is so full of propaganda. Now is your time to really assess for yourself who are you going to trust when things get really crazy, to give you accurate news. I've been a subscriber of the Epoch Times. I'm not affiliated with them. I just use the paper. And I can tell you, I had a lot I've learned from them. And I want to tell you that what you guys have given us is even a greater lesson in that. So the other thing that I know that we can do is what we've been doing now for our legislator, that's making those phone calls. Making the phone calls to the House of Representatives, to the Congress, to let them know how we want them to be on China. Make the phone call, folks, because if not, we're going to be sending our sons and daughters to knock on China's doors to be in a fight. So the phone calls are cheaper and easier. Make as many as you can. I'm asking you to, please, to tell us another thing that we can do as individuals, all right? And then if you have any ideas on what a civic government can do, what a municipal government can do, I'm a candidate for mayor and I would love to hear that suggestion. Thank you.
Can I say something? Can I say something for prosecutor? I'm a mother of 2 teenagers, and I find it really, really important for us to educate our children and grandchildren about this, because the schools are not talking about this. So I encourage both my daughters, and I know quite a few young teens and those who are in 20s. We encourage them to write research papers in this area, like human rights in China, the Communist Party's infiltration. That's very, very important. And I also highly encourage you to invite speakers like us, like Dr. Ho, Professor Ho, to give speeches in their classrooms as guest speakers. I think every student needs to learn about this. Because my feeling about the American education system, especially like I'm a mother, with people in school, I found that they're very, very ignorant about the history of the Communist Party. The schools do not want to teach anything about the Communist Party's history. So it's very, very important for us to give them opportunity to introduce speakers like us. Like I'm from California, but like I know locally you have quite a few very good, like Ashley. They can go to the classrooms and teach people about what's going on in China.
Thank you.
The question I have is concerning an alarming study here. About 115 colleges and universities have accepted monetary gifts from China, with Harvard receiving almost $1 billion in setting up culture studies. So are they not trying to destroy us from within? They may not ever have to fire, right?
You mean like the universities getting money from China?
Yes.
I think universities, the administration, they are very naive about the Communist Party. Like I work in universities all my life. I never left the university. So I know how naive they are. So that's also one of the reasons I come to speak, because many of them like say, oh, we know the Communist Party history, but when we hear from someone who lived it, that feels so different. So I do feel the most important is for all of us to speak out. I mean, and in Dallas, like I know quite a few people like me, and they're willing to speak out. So just give them opportunity so that everyone can be aware of this.
Real quickly, do either of you have an update on what countries in that region are doing independently of support by the United States, what Japan and other countries may be doing themselves to try to contain anything going on that they feel is overly aggressive from China?
I think we have some opposite. Probably Australia is number one, and Australia, New Zealand, and the Five Eyes, and the ASEAN countries would be difficult because the BRI has one of the strategies of BRI is, I think Dr. Chen may have mentioned about they call it the export corruption. So a lot of these government officials are sold out. So unfortunately, so if we want to go back to these countries, and we number one, we really have to build a strong ally. Number two, we will need to get them to know that this is like a trap, and for them to get into debt, and in the next 100 years, Trump or China already have to sell their important resources. And so one very important thing that we must raise awareness of fellow Americans. So I don't know whether you watched the movie The Darkest Hour. I mean, I always cite this movie. When Winston Churchill took the subway and walked through the subway, and he never took that, but he saw these mothers carrying baby or elderly people, basically all walks of life. Then asked them whether you still have the soul to defend the country. So this is something that is most touching to me, and they want him to fight, even though he's still the minority voice in the parliament. Then that is the part that changed the whole world, not just that little meeting in the subway ride changed the whole world. I'm more a Texan in Hong Kong, I have to say. I love this place called Fredericksburg. If you visit there, you must remember that we have a Texan by the name of Admiral Nimitz. We still have Admiral Nimitz in Texas. We still have Nimitz in America. Provide really well a condition that we must be aware that we are really at war. We are really at the Berlin moment, not the Berlin moment, the moment of the Munich agreement. Don't let this happen. Don't, never. I wish you the best to become the mayor and to really take the leadership more and more. Must take the moment to really influence our neighbors and fellow Americans. This is the moment we cannot just stay indifferent. So a few more that I want to say, and particularly echoing Dr. Chan's, we must rebuild U.S. media influence in Asia. We're losing the front big time. We allow Global Times, the CCTV to come to U.S. to publicize or to do the propaganda just like the regular media. We respect them, but they don't respect us. So we must do that and break the firewall. We must let the Chinese people know there's still hope and for our values. And we do not win by weapons. We win by our moral values because we care about individual humanities. So a few things I want to answer myself and why we have to mess with Hong Kong. It's so far away. Let Hong Kong die. Hong Kong is Chinese territory. Why we have to deal with it and waste money on it? Hong Kong was surrendered to China in 1997, but it was based on the treaty in 1984. British and the Chinese government agreed on three major things. Hong Kong will have full democracy by 2007. Hong Kong will have autonomy. Hong Kong will have a system unchanged for 50 years. So this is exactly what we experienced in the 1930s. We can keep this promise until they don't believe in this promise anymore. Openly saying that that is a historical document. This is blasphemy. And British government is already saying that, no, you broke the promise, we should break the promise too. We do not honor what you have said. So Johnson issued visas to over 3 million Hong Kong people to go there. A lot still choose to stay because they're waiting for a moment someone can fight with them. And U.S. has parallel measures and suggesting we call Hong Kong a life harbor. However, we have been still doing passive voice in Hong Kong and Taiwan. We are only waiting the Munich agreement moment to come. Taking ambiguous positions that allowed these people to strike anytime. When they strike, whether we wait for the Pearl Harbor moment or we just stay away. And now we had made a really bad mistake decades ago. We cannot let that happen. We must show strong deterrence. What is strong deterrence? When the former State Secretary stand in front of the U.S., the Chinese foreign ministry guy, that guy wouldn't dare to raise his voice to our highest diplomat. But in Alaska, he was basically teaching a lesson and lecturing our State Secretary. Can you just let it go like that? I was totally insulted. We are Americans. We gave you so much. We are your benefactor now. Nowadays, you turn around and say we are your student. And this is something I think we must take our moral value up, our moral courage up, and to really take actions. All right, thank you.
No, I think these are very, very interesting questions coming up, but we're running out of time. I'll take one quick question and one quick answer. Just one more, please. Go ahead.
Sir, you mentioned Admiral Nimitz. Nimitz is German, and the Germans colony here in Texas fled political oppression in Germany and came to freedom in Texas. Now my thought is, has any thought been given, here's my question, to the people of Hong Kong making a massive immigration out? And let's say Australia give you a piece of territory. Australia is mostly empty. Why not take your culture, your economic connections, and everything, and just move to a territory of Australia and just leave warehouses on the land that's currently Hong Kong? Save your culture.
Very interesting question. Let's have a brief answer.
That is a great idea. Actually, it has been considered by Canada, Japan, Taipei, Australia, and U.S. Unfortunately, I have to say that U.S. is still very passive in waiting for this to happen. And UK is doing the most proactive actions, like they allow the BNO. I should have brought my BNO. Right? I have a British passport, and to settle there. Even providing support to the less privileged population. If they cannot have a job, they don't get education. They allow them to come in. Now, there are two things that I love to do that, and but two things we must observe. Number one, imagine that you are a Burmese, and you know that the best option is free, but there's some more Burmese who will stay put because they're waiting some allies to fight for them. And now, give you some numbers. First one, a BNO visa. And allow BC, and they call the live outside the rule and allow Hong Kong people, they land on London Heathrow Airport, they can apply for citizenship. First month about 27,000. Second month maybe another 50,000. That is still not close to 100,000. Now, how many months before the 3 million, 4 million people can really find refuge in London or Heathrow or Manchester? That takes forever. Yes. Takes forever. Yeah. Now, the Hong Kong government can take, as that gentleman already suggested, can take border control any moment. I believe that they can do that anytime. Now, currently, they are using the curfew of the COVID to ban people from taking a meeting like this, going outside to eat. They cannot do that unless you take the phone, you take the scan the QR code. That is basically Chinese draconian authoritarian control of every single person's movement. And if you scan the QR code, that means whenever you go into the restroom, going to buy a newspaper in the 7-Eleven, then you'll be tracked. You'll be traced. But anyways, this is what I want to say is, this is basically fueled or encouraged or propelled by our government, by our leaders, because we do nothing. We just do pay lip service, and this is something that is lasting policy. And America is a moral power. we not only just speak up, we need to do something. We need to do something to show them. Now, clear deterrence is here. Dare you do this, we will act. Unless you just, okay, I just blame you, I just say this is not right, you should behave next time. Can you teach a kid like that? No. We must show strong resolve to, this is, now you do that, one more step, we'll take action, just like Mike Pompeo. And if Pompeo is in his office now, I don't think China will dare move one inch. This is how Chinese companies take advantage of every one of us, because we are staying quiet.
Thank you, Dr. Ho. We're running out of time. We are running out of time. As I'm going to ask our chairman to give a vote of thanks as he's walking, I want to answer one quick question. Somebody asked, what can we do here locally? What we can do locally here, we need to educate our people going into mayor's office and city council. The other candidate who needed to learn about it disappeared. We only have one candidate left. We need to educate our candidate, people going into City Hall, how to combat Y-way.
There's one candidate we didn't recognize. Young lady here. Do you want to identify?
Yeah, we did. Yeah, she did.
No, she didn't.
Okay.
Here, over here.
We are coming to that. First, give a word of thanks. They're still on.
One word of thanks here. The most important thing at Collin County Republican Men's Club, we do not endorse candidates. We're an educational forum. This is our 52nd year. Look up, get it. Today we have over 10 different organizations, and that's good. We're growing. It's an unbelievable county with all the influx of new people. But the Collin County Republican Men's Club welcome you to join and enjoy and help us with the education on national themes throughout. And welcome to thank you, Mr. President, and a tremendous growth.
Thank you. Thank you. One quick thing before we finish it up. We have one. We will identify the candidates finally at the end. I want to recognize one lady here, Ashley Smith. Ashley, I want to give a little bit bigger introduction about her. She gave a tremendous speech yesterday on the same topic at the North Texas Republican Women's. What a coincidence. Almost everything she articulated got repeated here today. And we have a person here, right here in Dallas, and we need to bring her and, educate us, not just this small group of CCRMC, but the rest of the Republicans in Collin County. And that being the case, we are going to have Ashley help us in next couple of months on our border security. That's the next topic we're going to have in our club, and we're trying to join with some other clubs. Ashley, could you stand up, please? I wanted to have her on this podium, but we're running out of time. She is tremendously educated. She is graduate of Oral Roberts University and law student from Liberty University. Yes. Please, just look forward to her organizing another forum similar to this in the next couple of months with CCRMC and a couple of other clubs. Okay. Now finally, let's just have the candidates who are running for upcoming election. Lydia, just quickly, 30 seconds, please.
Okay, I'm Lydia Ortega. I'm running for Plano Mayor. I've got a mask on, it's stuck on my ears. I want to ask for your support. Folks, I'm an economist by training, and I can predict, I can forecast the future. Let me tell you, what I see is uncertainty. And more than anything, you need a leader who can deal with that uncertainty and who will stand strong. I'm ready to fight for you. I'm ready to fight for Plano. I fight by asking the right questions all the time. So I'm asking you to look me up, Lydia Ortega for Plano, and I hope I can earn your support. Thank you.
I'm Marilyn Lockray. I'm running for the Plano ISD Board of Trustees, place 6. I am fighting for our children. I am a strong conservative Republican, and I am fighting a Democrat as an opponent. And so
so I need all the help I can get. I am turning the district upside down. They are really not happy with me coming in, but we are losing our children, and I'm ready to fight.
Thank you, ma'am. Two topics. First of all, Eric, our membership committee chair, quickly, can you give us how many people registered?
Real quick, thanks for coming. We had over 55 people attending tonight, 2 new members. There'll be some renewals along the way. Thank you so much for your support for the African American and the Collin County Republican Men's Clubs. This is really important. We really appreciate your support to get great speakers like this in this type of educational forum. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. And finally, I am disappointed. I expected a lot more attendance, but that's so it. But we're going to bring some similar topic pretty soon, and I hope we have better turnout. But anybody, if you like today's program, and if you like what we're doing, CCRMC and African American Republican Club, please join us. Eric is here. We'll take your application, join our group, and get this message out. We want to keep America in lead and the leader of the free world. CCRMC. Thank you. Thank you very much.
I just have one last announcement to make. Falun Gong practitioners, we handmade all these lucky charms. So each one of you, please take one. They're very pretty. And it says 3 words: truthfulness, compassion, and tolerance. So we should all remind ourselves to do that. And that will bring you harmony. Thank you.
Shirley and Paul, thank you for coming. And guests, if you like our program, please think about becoming our member. It's very simple, easy. Only $25 a year. Good night. Yes, sure.